Wheatgrass and Champagne podcast. I'm your host, Mandy Rose. I'm a holistic health coach with a passion to help others find balance in their life. My belief is that we can indulge in the amazing things life has to offer, like champagne, but still stay healthy using holistic approaches. Tune in each Wednesday to hear interviews with unique holistic entrepreneurs, learn practical tips on finding balance in your life, and get all the behind-the-scenes details of what I do to navigate my own health journey. Nothing is off limits in this series, so grab your shot of wheatgrass or your glass of champagne and prepare to upgrade your life and start healing. Thanks for tuning back in to this week's episode. I hope you have a glass of champagne ready because this episode is talking about love and sex, money, values, and beauty. And that is all things that Venus has to do with. But we are going to be talking about the dark side, the shadow side, the retrograde side of these topics. And the reason I wanted to talk about it this week is because I've heard so many people lately express the troubles that are going on in their relationships, whether they're romantic or friendships or even family. And you know, it's quite possible that with quarantine and people being around their immediate family and their significant others more than ever, that this brings up differences and issues and things that maybe we had been tucking under the rug for a while. And so not only has quarantine really made us aware of all the things in our lives that we want to change, but this Venus retrograde came in right about that time. And I really wanted to explain it because I think sometimes if we can understand why we're feeling a certain way, we maybe can push through it or maybe change the outcome. And I've been also noticing that a lot of celebrities are announcing their splits and their divorce. And this is something that is very common during Venus retrogrades. So I want to give you guys some tips and tricks, talk a little bit more about what is astrology, what is Venus represent, what is a retrograde season, when did it start, how long is it going to last, and what the heck can we do about it? So this episode might be a little bit all over the place, but I hope that it gives you some insight. Astrology is something that I've always been really passionate about. As a teenager, I always would look up my horoscope. I would get those books that had like every day is your birthday, and then you could like look up people's birthday and understand who they were. And it was something that just fascinated me. But it wasn't until just a couple of years ago that I really started understanding that planets are energies. Like the moon affects our bodies, so do the other planets. Also, where they were in the sky at the time that you were born is a representation of your life and your karma and your past lives. So this is something that has just been blowing my mind. And 2020 has been nothing but proving to me that our trajectory as a collective, as humans on planet Earth, is predicted in the stars. And it's something that astrologers and the Greeks and the Mayans have known for hundreds of thousands of years. We are just starting to get caught up again in modern day society because we've really kind of lost this mystical way of understanding ourselves and our collective consciousness. So I know these are all big words and it probably makes no sense to someone just tuning in who's like, I thought astrology meant like my horoscope, right? But let's kind of back it up a little bit further. So when we look up our horoscopes, we look up what's called our sun sign, and that is where the sun was at the time of our birth. So it's a season. So you have Cancer season and Leos and Virgos and Libras. So anyone that's born within those 28 to 30 days fall under the category of that astrology sign. That's your sun sign. However, the sun isn't the only planet that was in the sky at the moment you were born, right? The moon was somewhere, Jupiter was somewhere, Mars was somewhere. And so when you look at who everyone is as a person, we're also unique. You know, your best friend might be a Virgo and you might be a Virgo, but you guys might be completely different people, even though, you know, maybe to your core, you have the same values, like you're perfectionists and you love details, but you express your emotions differently, or maybe you have different passions. Like maybe one person has really hard time in relationships and the other person has a really hard time with their family members. These differences can all be explained by what's called your birth chart. And your birth chart is really just a snapshot of the sky at the moment we took our first breath. So this is what Vedic astrologers, different astrologers all over the world look at when we look at who someone is, figuring out what are the hard lessons we're going to have to learn, what are we going through, at different times in our life, How, are we going to have kids? What is our husband most likely going to look at? Our birth charts can tell us what we value the most, it can tell us what kind of careers we should be in. It can also be compared to someone else's birth chart so we can understand, do I and this person connect well? Is this person meant to teach me a lesson in a certain area of my life? So birth charts can be very specific and they're very detailed, and it's something I am fascinated with, and I do birth chart readings for someone. So if you are interested in getting just like a basic understanding of your birth chart, where the planets were in the sky when you were born, what it means, please send me a message, wheatgrassandchampagne@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram, mandyrose.1111. Send me a message and we can totally dive into your own personal birth chart. I think it's so fascinating. So that's really, talking about the planets on an individual level. But in this episode, I want to broaden it up to everybody. And we have to remember, even though the planets were at a specific spot when you were born, they're always moving and always expanding. And so we have to look at where the planets are today, right now. What are they doing right now in the sky? If we were to wake up every single day and every single night before we go to bed, look up in the sky and look where those planets are, their movement and how they're interacting with each other and what direction they're going based on our perception from Earth, all impact us as a collective, as a society, as a culture, as a country. And so that's what I want to talk about today is specifically the planet Venus and what's called a retrograde. So before I dive into that specific topic, I invite you to kind of expand your mind, open your mind, and really kind of listen to what I'm going to share with a curiosity. You might not really necessarily believe in astrology and everything I just explained about the planets having energies, but you might hear something I say today that just kind of resonates with you on a relationship level. So even if astrology is not your thing, we all struggle with relationship dynamics, soulmate connections, family dynamics. So I'm going to talk a lot about just ways to push through little issues in your relationships and also different perspectives we can take to better understand what is actually the root problem in our relationships. And Venus does deal with some money and beauty and aesthetics and values. So I am going to bring those things up, but I'm really going to focus on relationships today because that is something I hear over and over again from friends and family and in the media. People are breaking up. People are struggling in their relationships. People are stressed out, debating, should they stay in the relationship? Should they end the relationship? Should they call their ex? Should they start a different relationship? Should they start dating again if they've been, single for a long time? So hopefully the clarity and understanding of Venus retrograde will help you in your life and help you also make the best decision going forward. So grab your glass of champagne, or actually just grab the whole bottle because this episode is going to get juicy. Relationships are hard AF. The whole cycle of Venus has started in April and it's going to last until the end of July. So if you're catching this episode towards the tail end of it, this can maybe make sense of what's been going on in your life the past couple months and also help you kind of brace for what's to come until the end of July. So let's begin. All right, so before we dive into Venus retrograde, I want to back it way up and kind of break down the words and the terms before we go into all the juicy details. So let's first talk about the planet Venus. A lot of people hear Venus and we think of the Roman goddess, right? So if you go way back to school and think about when we talked about the Greek and the Roman goddesses, what is the goddess Venus all about? And she's all about love and beauty, desire, sex, fertility, prosperity. All these things actually came from the planet Venus. So Venus is a female-ruled planet. She is a goddess. She wants life to be beautiful. She wants life to be filled with romance. She wants to feel beautiful and look beautiful. She wants her surroundings, her home, her atmosphere to be beautiful. She wants love and romance and sex and all those things that are just totally glamorized by our society. That is Venus. And these topics are such important aspects of our life. I mean, they are the things that bring us joy and fulfillment. It's the things that we're craving every single day, right? It's our values. And that's what Venus also represents, is our values, who we are, what we believe in. It rules finances, budgeting and making big purchases, typically purchases that are, luxurious and glamorous, or things that make us feel good, right? So I really like to think of the planet Venus in our birth charts and also in the sky as kind of like our joy. And Venus is the ruler of Libra and Taurus. So if you are a Libra or a Taurus sun, that's your horoscope sign, or it's your rising or your moon sign, you're going to be more affected by what Venus is doing in the sky today. If you're a male and we look at your birth chart, Venus represents your wife or your future partner. So we look in your birth chart where she is and how you might meet her. So she is the planet that I think is so important to us. And that's why Venus retrograde can really impact us, because it is a big source of our joy and our goals in life. So that is the planet Venus. Next, let's talk about retrogrades. What are retrogrades? And this is a really hard concept to kind of explain through a podcast versus a video. However, I'm going to do my best to try to break it down so you can understand it. So pretty much, here's the example I love to give. We all know that the sun comes up and then it sets, right? So you see it rising in the east and it sets in the west, and every single day we can watch the sun go from east to west. Same thing with the moon. We see the moon rise and we see the moon set. All the planets do the same thing, but typically we don't see them because they're a little further away and they actually look like a little star in the sky. So when the planets are moving from east to west, that is what's called a direct motion. They're going in the direct motion every single day, doing the same trajectory through the sky. However, during a retrograde, what is happening is that the Earth is shifting and the Earth is tilting. And so let's say you lived thousands of years ago and there was no electricity, and every single day you stepped out of your little teepee and you looked up in the sky and you looked at all the stars and you see the star Venus, and it is moving through the sky. Every night you see it getting a little bit further to the west, a little bit further to the west, and then all of a sudden you start noticing that it's kind of stopped and it doesn't look like it's moving anymore. And then you come out the next day and the next day and the next day, and you slowly start realizing that that star is going backwards. It's going towards the east horizon, not the west anymore, right? So this is what happens as the Earth shifts and tilts. The image of Venus to our eye appears as if it's moving backwards. It's not really moving backwards at all. It's just the tilt and the shift of the Earth is making it look like it's going backwards. And this is what we call a retrograde. And so we have different parts that's happening during this retrograde. So we have the planet going in a direct motion. It's popping along the sky from east to west. And then all of a sudden it shifts backwards, right? But before it shifts backwards, it's got to stop and it's got to pause. And this is called a stationary position of the planet. It's stationary for like a day or two. And then all of a sudden it starts going backwards. So that is called the retrograde phase, until it also gets to a point where it stops retrograding, stops moving backwards, becomes stationary again. And then it moves forward all over again. So now when it's moving forward, it's actually crossing the same path that it crossed the first time around, the same path that it crossed as it was retrograding, and now it's crossing that same path for the third time. And this is why retrogrades are huge, because the energy of that planet has given us 3 chances to learn a lesson. Once as it was moving forward, twice as it was moving backwards, and a third time as it goes back in its direct position, moving on through the horizon off to the west. So I hope that that makes sense to you on a visual perspective, right? So we have this period, the first time it's moving across the sky from east to west, before it does this backwards motion, is what we call the pre-shadow phase. It's like gearing up. It's like making this energy. It's moving along the sky and it's doing its thing, and that's the pre-shadow. So anything that comes up in that original motion, any lessons, anything that comes up in your life around that time is kind of like a warning light. It's like, hey, see, this is coming up. You're going to get a chance to redo it. You're going to get a chance to reevaluate this, because that's retrograde. Retrograde, R-E, stands for redoing, reigniting, recommitting, reevaluating, re-understanding. Any word with the word re in it equates to a retrograde. So the planet's moving along and it's making its moves and it has this energy in our life. Something happens in our life and it's like this warning of like, hey, this lesson's going to come back later. And then the planet goes retrograde and all those lessons come tumbling in and making us question ourselves and understand things in a different way and not really understanding sometimes, why am I feeling this way? I didn't feel this way a month ago. Where did this just come from? So that's why I really wanted to talk about retrograde season, because in 2020, guys, we have 5 different retrogrades going on with all major planets. And Mercury retrograde is something we hear about all the time. It happens 3 times a year. So these are things that are constantly happening in our lives. And unless we understand the dates and can kind of connect the dots with what's happening in our life, with what planets in retrograde, then we can better understand our life path, our purpose. We can make sense of energies and the weird feelings. You know, do you ever have this happen to you? And this is something I hear all the time with, talking to my girlfriends about relationships. They'll say everything was going fine and now we just can't stop fighting. We just can't stop fighting. We're fighting about nothing. We're fighting all the time and everything seemed so good a month ago. Venus retrograde, right? During these retrogrades, it's really an activation. Every planet kind of correlates to a chakra system. So if you don't know what our chakras are, they're just energy centers in our body. So we have something called our heart chakra. And Venus is the goddess of love, so it relates to the heart. So during a Venus retrograde, our heart chakra is meant to purge and detox and upgrade and reprogram. Think of like our bodies like a computer system. Every day we're downloading data, taking in sensory information, and eventually some of those files may become corrupted, or maybe we learned something that wasn't good for us and later in life it's like a bad habit. So if we are like a computer program, retrogrades are meant to help us uninstall, delete messy files, and upgrade to a new software system. So that's what's happening during retrogrades. It's meant to help you live your best life. Like Venus is acting like that coach, that tough coach in your life that really forces you to up level and upgrade and move past the difficult struggles that we have. So these planets are just big life coaches for us. And it's also meant to help you kind of look internally and go, why do I feel this way? Where is this coming from? How can I change these things? So retrogrades are really special to me, and they've helped me really kind of up level my life and really evaluate the things that are most important to me. And now we have one more aspect to this Venus retrograde. So we talked about the planet Venus and what she means. We talked about retrograde and what the heck that even looks like. But now we have to also look at what astrological sign is Venus doing her retrograde in. So that means if you looked up at the sky and you see the star Venus, the planet Venus, moving in the sky, what constellation is she moving through? And right now she is moving through Gemini. So now we can understand what is the theme, what is the motto, what is the area of our life that this Venus retrograde is going to impact the most. And it is in the sign of Gemini. And Gemini is all about the twins. So it's all about communication. It's that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality. It's about being really loud and outgoing and then all of a sudden turning inwards and being very shy and quiet. Geminis are all about intellectualism, the mind, looking at questioning things and exploring things, expanding a horizon. Like Geminis need stimulation. As soon as they feel like their life kind of becomes stagnant or boring, they start to seek and seek and seek for this external stimulation. So with Venus being in Gemini during this retrograde season, where the themes around love, the themes around money, the themes around values and sex and beauty all have to do with the heart and the mind connection. Heart being Venus, mind being Gemini, the heart and mind connection. And since retrogrades are meant to bring up these shadow parts of ourselves, the parts that are no longer working or serving us anymore, we have to look at the shadow of Gemini. So as a star sign, what is the shadows of Gemini? They are masking our motivations, hiding things under the surface, like not acknowledging what our deepest needs and desires are, kind of ignoring them. It's all about lies and deceit and manipulation. And that's why Venus retrogrades, specifically in Gemini, can bring up so many problems in our relationships, because Gemini is all about polarities. It's questioning things. We're like wondering, is this relationship really what I want? Is it best serving me? Is this person lying to me? Am I being manipulated? Why are we fighting all the time? Do I feel like I can't trust that person? Are they not being sincere? It's about maybe being in a long-term relationship and all of a sudden you start to feel stagnant, stuck. Like I said, Geminis, when you feel stuck or stagnant, they want to run. They want to seek new. They want to explore things. So if this is how you're feeling in your relationship, it can really be explained by this Venus retrograde going on right now. So I'm going to dive way more into that. But let's first talk about dates, because looking at the dates when all of this is happening will help you better make sense of your own life and the lessons that you're personally going through and kind of what to expect as we go on into the rest of the Venus retrograde. And the whole purpose of this retrograde season is to paint a picture for you. It's like a journey to search for authenticity and integrity. Look into your mind, figure out what is my truth. These 6 weeks, the cool thing about Venus in retrograde that I love is that Venus retrograde lasts 40 days and 40 nights. And if you're biblical, which I am, 40 days and 40 nights is such a sacred time in the Bible. It takes us that long, 6 weeks, to change our habits. It takes that long for us to really process things. So I want you to take a look into your mind and understand, what is my truth? How can I align my values to what is important to me? That is what Venus retrograde is all about. So don't be reactive. This is not a time to react. I'm going to talk about it more in this episode, but just go inward. Slow down before you pull the trigger on things in your life. And I'll explain that again more as we talk specifically about Venus retrograde. So let's talk about some dates. Okay, so here's the thing with Venus retrograde. The pre-shadow phase, like I was saying earlier, when Venus was kind of just bopping along the sky, doing her own thing, before she made any turns, was April 10th to May 12th. So that, like I said, anything that was going on in your life, in your relationships, and your finances, beauty, values, any topic or theme. So let's talk specifically about relationships. What was going on in your relationship from April 10th to May 12th? And I know for a lot of us, we were in quarantine, right? So most of us were home either with a significant other, or we were single and we weren't dating and hadn't really been around people, but maybe you'd been texting, maybe you were on the internet flirting with some people. So kind of think back, what was going on in my life and in my relationships around that time? And then May 12th is when Venus went stationary and started going retrograde. She started going backwards. And this was the time for us from May 12th until June 24th. This is when the lessons are coming in. This is when we are really being shown and pushed to learn these lessons, to break the patterns, to really understand who we are in our relationships. So from May 12th till June 24th is the actual retrograde period. And then from June 24th until July 29th is what's called the post-shadow phase. So that is when Venus is turning around and going back on track. So that is the time when we take all the lessons that we learned in our relationships and all the crap it's going to dredge up from May 12th to June 24th, and we have another chance to make it right. We have from June 24th until July 29th to take the lessons we learned and implement them into our lives and to make decisions and to better our lives. All right, so now that we have dates covered, what is happening in the sky, what lessons we're going to be learning, let's talk about some themes that might be coming up during this Venus retrograde. And some of them I've heard from friends and family kind of sharing and expressing to me what's going on in their relationships. Other things are, what I've heard in the media going on. So these are just some general themes. It could be so different and so specific for you, but I just want to kind of get you thinking and some ideas on what might really be at the root cause of your arguments in your relationships. So one is maybe not feeling open. So you don't feel warmth or affection from your significant other. This is very Gemini. So like I said, Gemini is the twins and it rules communication and the mind. So you might have someone that's very communicative and all about you and talking to you all the time. And then all of a sudden they shut down. They don't want to talk. They seem disinterested. They're not warm. They're not affectionate. They're like that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of relationship. and it can throw you for a loop. Another theme is hard to trust others. If you're someone that's having a really hard time all of a sudden trusting other people, trusting your friends that they're telling you the truth, trusting your family members to maybe have your best interests at heart, having a hard time trusting your significant others. Are they telling you who they're talking to? Are they telling you, where they were and what they're doing? So this is a big theme right now. Hard to trust your own instincts. Do you ever feel like in your relationship, like you can't trust if you are making the right decision? You meet someone new and you go on a couple dates with them and you just feel like you can't quite trust yourself to tell if they're a good person or not. So this might be something that keeps coming up. You suspect insincerity in your relationships. Like you feel like people are telling you something to your face, but it doesn't feel authentic. Like in your soul, you just feel like they're being deceitful or they're not being sincere. Maybe they have like a different motive. That might be something that keeps coming up. Having thoughts about past relationships. This is a really, really big thing that happens during Venus retrogrades. Exes will show back up in your life. Old relationships, old friendships. People will start crawling back into your life. And this is a karmic lesson. This is a chance for you to make a difference, to act differently. So whether you do get back into that old relationship, you have to get through some karmic things. You have to reevaluate yourself. Is this really what I want? Is this person changed? So you might notice like people from the past coming back in. And if they're not coming back to you, are you thinking about them more? Are thoughts of past relationships, what you miss in someone, is that coming back? Is a lot of anger coming back from the past? If you think about an old lover, are you angry about what happened or how it ended? You may not have thought about them for months and months and months. And all of a sudden during Venus retrograde, you start getting these pulls to think of the relationship and really contemplate it and have these feelings that feel really real and really intense, like you're missing that person. So past relationships is a big thing that comes up. Impulsiveness, so making rash decisions. This is something I hear all the time during Venus retrograde. This is not a time to break up. It is not a time to ask for a divorce. This is not a time to end a friendship or cut off a family member, because all of these emotions are heightened during a Venus retrograde. So we don't want to be rash and impulsive. We want to feel this energy. We want to go inward and ask ourselves, why am I feeling this way? Where is it coming from? Is this real? Is this just temporary? Is this lesson meant to teach me something? So you often see, people who are unaware of Venus retrograde or the energies, they just kind of get to this point in their relationship where they go, I can't do this anymore. This is it. The energy is too intense. I'm over it. I've reached my limit. I'm done. And they break up. And oftentimes in the second half of Venus retrograde, you start seeing all these divorces. I keep seeing it. Who else has noticed that a lot of celebrities have announced a split or a divorce in the last 2 to 3 weeks? And it's going to keep coming until June 24th. People you never thought would break up during a Venus retrograde. However, it's never a clean break. During a Venus retrograde, if you break up or end something, it is not a clean break. Things will be left unsaid, things will be left unaccomplished, and oftentimes you will circle back around and either regret it or feel like maybe you were too harsh or too rash and you want to go back and try it again. So here are some things that you can expect during a Venus retrograde in the area of love. It's often harder to feel loved, valued, and appreciated. You're often going to feel like someone doesn't care about you. Maybe someone doesn't even care if they're in a relationship with you. These are themes that might come up. You're also going to feel like it's harder to love others the way they want to be loved. You might be trying to love someone and you just feel like, they don't even seem to notice. They don't seem to care. It's easier to feel like people aren't on the same page as you. This is something that you can expect during a Venus retrograde. Old relationships might resurface, or issues that you had in old relationships might start showing up in your current relationship. So if you were someone that was always really insecure in a past relationship, and maybe you weren't in your current, but all of a sudden you are, this is a theme that you're supposed to be working through and learning and moving past. Relationships that start during a Venus retrograde, you'll notice when the retrograde ends, that relationship might become totally different. So you might be in like a really happy, lovey-dovey honeymoon phase, and Venus retrograde ends, and now all of a sudden your relationship feels like it's totally different. That person doesn't seem to care anymore. So you can see these major shifts during and then after a Venus retrograde if you're new to a relationship. In the area of beauty, you might find that Changes that you make to your look or your wardrobe might not go as expected. So you might go get like a new haircut and absolutely hate it. You might start to feel more insecure about how you look. All of a sudden, you just are looking at your nose every day going, oh my God, I can't stand this. Or you might feel like your body isn't what you want it to be, but it's always been the same body. You just might start noticing it and nitpicking yourself more during Venus retrograde. It's easier to fall for like too good to be true kind of beauty routines, like getting Botox or getting, lip injections. You might fall for these things and then do them and regret them. When it comes to money, Venus also rules money and finances. It's harder to spend money wisely. So looking at your budget, really being cautious and careful with your money. The way that you earn money might change unexpectedly during a Venus retrograde. You might also get money like from a past somewhere, might just show up on your doorstep. And since Gemini is all about communication and the mind, you might have a lot of miscommunication and misunderstandings with your significant other. So here's some tips and tricks for that. So give space to your partner. Let them speak their truth without interrupting them, with undivided attention and without judgment. Give them space and allow them to speak their truth. This is how you're going to get through the Venus retrograde and make your relationship better. Also, listen to their needs. Don't make it about you or what you want. Try to get them to communicate with you what they need. What do they feel like is missing? That way you can better understand what's actually going on with them if they're maybe being reactive or they're not communicating. Just don't react. Be responsive, be listening, but don't react. This is not a time to react to anything. And work on your patience and compassion. These are such important traits in any relationship, but really, really important during a Venus retrograde. And if you're having struggles in your relationship, maybe these are some questions you could start asking yourself about your partner. Are their intentions pure? Is his or her intentions pure? Do they really love me? Or are they just using me? Are they needing me for comfort or security or to help watch their children or whatever it might be? Do they want what's best for me? Are they really on my team and want what's best for me? Or are they being selfish and wanting things just for their own benefit? And lastly, are they adding to my growth? Are they helping me grow as a person? Are they helping me become a better person? And if not, are they willing to adapt and change? Are they willing to be open to helping me live my best version? If it's a hell yes to all that, then everything is going to work out during Venus retrograde. These issues that come up, they need to be addressed. This is the time to expand your relationship, grow in your relationship, really tackle into those things that are causing the same fights and the same problems over and over and over again. So just center yourself, get away from all that chaos, and try to figure out what for you is the best option. So something we really want to kind of think about is realizing that no one can complete you. This isn't a time to lock in a new relationship. This isn't a time that you want to start dating or getting married or getting engaged or making big decisions. This is a time where we kind of want to go inward and say, no one can complete me. I need to work on me. Self-love, right? Venus is about love, and it's not just about love of other people, it's love of ourselves. We really, really have to love ourselves first before we can love someone else. And I know that's cliche, but Venus retrograde is going to force us to do that. It's either going to drag you along until that relationship just explodes and hurts you so bad that you finally have to let go. But the reason for that is because you probably don't have this basis of self-love, knowing that you will be just fine if this person leaves your life, right? And these lessons that are going to come up, they might just seem to punch you in the face. That person might just hurt you over and over and over and over again. And the universe is saying it's time to go. It's time to let go. And we don't let go. We don't like change. We don't want to end relationships. We don't want to start over. But sometimes we are dragged and dragged along until we absolutely have to change. So if this is happening to you, self-love, dive into Venus self-love, dive into beauty. What makes you feel beautiful? What makes your surroundings really beautiful? This is something I love to do when I'm feeling really down. I try to think of every sense that I can and how can I bring that to life and make me feel really good. So I love furry and fuzzy things. So I'll grab a really furry, fuzzy blanket. I love smelling vanilla. Vanilla is one of my favorite scents. So I put a vanilla candle on. I like low dim lighting. So I'll put on like a mood lighting, like a red or a purple. I like the sound of like meditation music or water. So I'll put on like, a YouTube channel with like running, flowing water. And those things just make me feel really good. And then I can open up my ability to feel good and feel love, right? And it's a time, like I said, for self-care practices. Venus retrograde is an amazing time to show ourselves love through self-care. Taking little pockets of time every single day and saying, I love myself enough that I'm going to do something good for myself today. Did you do that for yourself today? Did you do that for yourself yesterday? Have you even done that for yourself this week and said, you know what? I deserve to feel amazing, and this face mask I know will do that for me. Or going for a walk by the water will really recharge me. Do something that proves to yourself that you love yourself so much that you are going to make time to do something that you love. Getting into that feminine energy, right? Like dancing and writing and painting and listening to beautiful things and looking at beautiful things. So self-care time is so monumental during a Venus retrograde. It also helps us to take the focus off of these hard lessons we're learning in relationships. So if you are going through a lot of relationship struggles and fights and hiccups and things that just are not working, don't keep beating yourself against the wall and fighting and fighting and fighting with this person. Take a pause, introspect, go inwards, use your Gemini mind and think to yourself, what do I really want? What are my needs? Get in touch with yourself. Like I said, kind of go inwards and stop focusing on the outwards, because that energy will tame down. That vast, combative struggles that you're going through will tame down as Venus goes direct again. But for now, let's work on ourselves and realizing what we really want and what we really need. So I guess overall, the real theme of Venus retrograde that I want to, suggest these, everyone's got to learn their own karmic lessons. Everyone's got their own life destiny. So I'm not saying don't do these things, but these are just not suggested during Venus retrogrades. Don't get married, but also don't break up. Don't get engaged. Maybe don't start a new relationship. Venus retrograde also is a time for experimental dating, looking at your relationship from a different perspective, being open, trying new ways of dating, whatever that might mean to you. Making big financial purchases are a big no-no. You don't want to buy a house or buy a car. If you do, these could be karmic lessons that'll come back and bite you in the butt. So, that car might be like a money pit. The house might have issues later on. So be very careful with big financial purchases. When it comes to beauty, no new hairdos, no plastic surgery, no surgeries, nothing aesthetically or beauty related changes during a Venus retrograde. Wait till it goes direct. Past lovers might reappear, so this is not a time to get into past relationship drama. If it comes back into your life, reevaluate it, but it's meant to complicate your current life. It's going to complicate your current life, so be very cautious of that. Again, don't make any major decisions until it goes direct, and it goes direct June 25th. This is the green light. The direct forward motion is when all the energy, everything that we learned, all the lessons, all the crazy shenanigans that was going on during retrograde is going to propel forward. It's like the green light. Let's move forward. Let's take this energy. Think of like a slingshot. This retrograde is like a slingshot. It's going to like pull itself back. That's the retrograde that we're going through from May 12th to June 25th. And then we're going to pause on June 25th. And then boom, the slingshot is going to shoot forward and the energy flies forward. And now all the things that we learned are going to start to play out. It's going to start to work itself out. It's going to start to make shifts and changes in our lives. So you'll start seeing relationships shifting towards the end of June and into July. And it's going to take until the end of July for Venus to go right back on her merry way and continue forward in the sky with new lessons and a new path. So be still weary. This isn't going to just end at the end of June. You're going to kind of still feel it, and you're going to have another opportunity to kind of make things right. Or end relationships that you really think, okay, I've done my work, I've done my thinking, and in my soul, I don't feel like this is working, or maybe these are some changes we need to make things better, right? This is an opportunity for us to learn and to grow. So I want to end this with some practical things that you can do, right? So like I said, journaling is a really big thing. So I'm going to give you guys some journal prompts. So feel free to write these down and come back to them later, or, journal them a couple times during this period. Number 1, what is my heart's truest desire? And whatever that means to you, just write that on a piece of paper and just start scribbling. It doesn't have to make sense. Just write and write and write. Dump it on paper. What is my heart's truest desire? Number 2, how can I improve my self-care routine. This is kind of something I just talked about. How can I improve my self-care routine? What can I do? What are specific things that I love to do? When are times I can do it? How can I make this happen in my life? Number 3, how do you communicate your needs? This is a really, really big one. I think so many of us do not express our needs often enough. We let our partners try to guess, and they're not mind readers. They have no idea. You could be subtle and be like, well, I kind of like it when you do this, or, oh, here's a picture in a magazine that I really like. Look at this purse. I really like this purse. Or, yelling at your partner when they come home. Like, I thought you were going to be here over an hour ago. I was going to make dinner, like kind of being upset when your needs aren't met versus actually sharing when your needs are met. So get really clear on your needs. Oftentimes we don't even know what we need. Like, you just get upset with your spouse, but you don't really know why you're upset or what do you actually need from them. So get really clear on your needs. Journal this, write it down. And then how do you communicate it? Would it be best to write them a letter or maybe a list? Or are you good with talking face to face? What ways can you communicate clearer your needs? Number 4, what is your love language? Do you know your love language? If not, you can go to the quiz online. It's 5lovelanguages.com. Figure out what is your love language. Because once you know that and you can share that with someone else, we can better get our needs met. Number 6, what are your non-negotiables and your deal breakers? This is so important to understand about ourselves before we get into relationships, and also helping us understand when it's time to get out of relationships. So write down, what are my non-negotiables? What do I absolutely need to have in a relationship? Is it trust? Is it security? Is it financial security? Is it someone that you feel is loyal? Is it, someone who likes to travel? Figure out, what's my non-negotiable? And then look at, what are my deal breakers? What is something I will absolutely not stand for at all? And that way, when you're clear on these 2 things and someone comes into your life, you can easily go, nope, that's not on my list. Or nope, this is not what I'm looking for. And find a way to walk away a little bit quicker. Also, some essential oils that you can use are rose, plumeria, and geranium. Those are all related to the heart chakra. So putting a little bit of those on, or put it in a spray, or diffuse it in your house as you go through these journal prompts might be really, really helpful for you. And this is a mantra I love, so I suggest writing this on your mirror. This is a great mantra for Venus retrograde. My greatest strength is love. And that's really the best advice I could give about Venus retrograde. So I hope this was insightful. I hope this kind of helps you understand, the energies that are going on. You're not the only one going through this. You're not the only relationship that's struggling. So many people are feeling this energy, and just know as the retrograde ends and the planets start to shift back into their own purpose, you're going to be feeling a lot lighter and a lot better. And the relationships that are meant to be in your life will stay, and they will just feel so much better, so much lighter, so much more joyful. And that is the purpose, like I said, of the retrograde, is to shake it all up and put it back in its right place so we can move on and go on to the next retrograde and the next lesson we're supposed to be learning. So if you guys really love this episode, if you love me talking about astrology, you love hearing about the retrogrades and what's going on in the sky and relating it to practical everyday terms, let me know, and I will do more episodes, because there's 4 other retrogrades going on. There's more coming up. There's the Mercury retrograde. I would love to do more episodes on this if this is something that interests you guys. So hit me up, message me, connect with me, let me know your thoughts. I'm going to wrap up this episode. Good luck getting through the rest of Venus retrograde, and I will catch you guys all next week, Wednesday, with a new topic with a really awesome guest. You'll have to tune in to find out who. And as always, whether you're cleansing or celebrating, cheers!